In just 43 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved morning show hosts would deliver a verbal takedown so devastating that it would send the Duchess of Sussex storming off set in a fury of expletives and accusations. What started as pointed questions about charity work would spiral into a full-scale character assassination, with Alison Hammond refusing to back down when faced with royal entitlement at its most toxic. The atmosphere in the This Morning studio was already thick with tension before the cameras even started rolling. Meghan Markle had arrived 20 minutes late, her entourage of publicists and assistants trailing behind her like a small army. Production staff whispered nervously in corners as they watched her dismiss the hair and makeup team with barely concealed disdain, insisting her own glam squad handle her appearance instead. "I don't understand why we couldn't do this remotely from Montecito," Meghan complained loudly to her chief of staff, making no effort to lower her voice despite being surrounded by crew members. "This whole setup is so amateur compared to what we're used to in America." Alison Hammond, veteran of countless celebrity interviews and known for her warm, disarming approach, observed the pre-show drama with growing concern. She'd interviewed Hollywood A-listers, pop royalty, and genuine members of the British royal family, but something about Meghan's energy felt different, entitled, performative, and strangely hostile. "Right, 5 minutes to air," called the floor manager, his voice cutting through the studio chatter. Meghan settled into her chair with visible reluctance, her expression already defensive despite the interview not having begun. "Just remember," Alison said gently, settling into her own seat, "this is meant to be a celebration of your charitable work. Our viewers love hearing about positive initiatives." Meghan's smile was razor sharp. "Of course, though I do hope you'll be asking more substantial questions than your usual fluff pieces. American audiences expect a certain level of sophistication." The comment landed like a slap. Alison's eyebrows rose slightly, but her professional composure remained intact. Around them, camera operators exchanged glances. In over 2 decades of broadcasting, Alison had never had a guest openly insult her interviewing style before filming even began. 3, 2, 1, action. "Good morning, everyone." Alison beamed into the camera with her trademark warmth. "I'm here with the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, who's joining us to discuss her latest charitable endeavors. Meghan, thank you for being with us today." "Thank you for having me, Alison," Meghan replied, her media-trained smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Though I have to say, the energy in this studio is quite different from what I'm accustomed to." The backhanded comment hung in the air for a beat too long. Alison's smile faltered almost imperceptibly before she recovered with professional grace. "Well, we like to think we bring a bit of British warmth to morning television," Alison responded diplomatically. "Now, let's talk about your work with young women's education initiatives. Can you tell us about the impact you've been able to make?" Meghan launched into what was clearly a rehearsed response, speaking at length about empowerment and global sisterhood, while somehow managing to make every sentence about her own journey and struggles. As she spoke, her gestures became increasingly theatrical, her voice taking on the practiced cadence of someone who'd given this same speech countless times. "It's so important that young women see themselves reflected in leadership positions," Meghan continued, "which is why my visibility in these spaces is absolutely crucial. When I walk into a room, I'm not just representing myself. I'm representing every woman who's been told she doesn't belong." "That's wonderful," Alison interjected, trying to steer the conversation toward specifics. "Can you tell us about concrete outcomes? How many young women have directly benefited from your programs?" Meghan's expression shifted, a flash of irritation crossing her features. "Well, Alison, I think you're missing the bigger picture here. It's not about numbers. It's about cultural impact, about shifting paradigms. The work I'm doing operates on a level that can't be quantified by your typical British metrics." The condescension was unmistakable this time. Several crew members looked up from their equipment, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Alison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see," Alison said carefully. "But surely our viewers would be interested in hearing about tangible results. For instance, how much funding has your foundation distributed? How many scholarships have been awarded?" "You know what, Alison?" Meghan's voice took on a sharper edge. "This is exactly the kind of reductive thinking that I've been fighting against my entire career. You're trying to diminish transformational work by reducing it to spreadsheets and statistics. I'm simply asking for accountability, Alison replied, her tone still measured, but with a steel underneath that regular viewers would recognize as a warning sign. When public figures ask for donations and support, people want to know their money is making a real difference. Meghan leaned forward slightly, her media smile completely gone now. Are you seriously questioning my integrity on live television? After everything I've sacrificed to do this work? The studio fell completely silent except for the hum of cameras. Even the usually bustling gallery seemed to hold its breath. Alison Hammond, known for her ability to charm the most difficult celebrities, found herself face to face with someone who seemed determined to turn every question into a personal attack. I'm not questioning your integrity, Meghan, Alison said slowly, her voice carrying a warning note that anyone familiar with her interviewing style would recognize. I'm asking for the kind of transparency that every legitimate charity provides as a matter of course. Legitimate charity? Meghan's voice rose slightly. Are you actually sitting there suggesting that my work isn't legitimate? After everything I've given up, everything I've endured, you have the audacity to question whether my efforts are legitimate? The confrontation was escalating faster than anyone in the studio had anticipated, and what came next would push both women past the point of no return. The gallery erupted into frantic whispers as the show's producer gestured wildly at his monitor, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the car crash continue unfolding live. Alison Hammond, her 20-year career built on turning even the most difficult interviews into watchable television, made a decision that would define the entire confrontation. Meghan, she said, her voice dropping to that dangerously calm tone that regular viewers knew meant business. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not attacking your character. I'm doing my job. When someone comes on this show to promote charitable work, viewers expect transparency. It's really that simple. Meghan's laugh was sharp and humorless. Simple? Nothing about my life has been simple since I married into that family and became a target for people like you. People like me? Alison's eyebrows shot up. And what kind of person am I exactly? The studio atmosphere had shifted completely now. Camera operators leaned closer, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. In the gallery, executives were frantically debating whether to intervene, but the ratings monitor showed viewers were glued to their screens. This was compulsive television. You know exactly what I mean, Meghan replied, her voice taking on a victim's tremor that felt calculated rather than genuine. Ever since Harry and I had the courage to speak our truth, we've been subjected to this kind of hostile interrogation disguised as journalism. Alison's professional mask slipped just enough to reveal the steel underneath. Hostile interrogation? I asked you about scholarship numbers, Meghan. If that feels hostile to you, perhaps you should examine why. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Meghan snapped, her carefully constructed media persona cracking visibly. I've dealt with enough amateur psychologists in the British press to last several lifetimes. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Alison Hammond, one of Britain's most beloved television personalities, had just been compared to the tabloid journalists who had hounded the royal family for decades. The insult was as calculated as it was unfair. Right, Alison said, her voice now carrying an edge that made veteran crew members straighten up with anticipation. So asking for basic accountability makes me equivalent to tabloid harassment? That's quite a leap, even for someone with your flair for the dramatic. Meghan's mouth fell open slightly. She wasn't used to pushback this direct, this unapologetic. In her carefully curated media ecosystem, interviewers typically approached her with deference, treating her grievances as gospel truth rather than examining them critically. Excuse me? Meghan's voice rose dangerously. Did you just accuse me of being dramatic about the racism and harassment I've endured? I accused you of being dramatic about scholarship statistics, Alison replied coolly. The fact that you immediately jumped to racism suggests you might be more interested in playing victim than answering straightforward questions. The words hit like a physical blow. Around the studio, crew members exchanged shocked glances. Alison Hammond, known for her warmth and diplomacy, had just delivered one of the most brutal reality checks in morning television history. Meghan's face flushed red. How dare you sit there and dismiss my lived experience? You have absolutely no idea what it's like to be scrutinized and attacked the way I have been." "You're right," Alison acknowledged, her tone remaining infuriatingly calm. "I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to be a professional. And right now, you're behaving like anything but." The studio fell into complete silence, except for the mechanical whir of cameras capturing every moment of the meltdown. Meghan stared at Alison with undisguised fury, clearly struggling to process being challenged so directly by someone she'd expected to handle with kid gloves. "Professional?" Meghan's voice dripped with disdain. "You want to talk about professional? A professional interviewer wouldn't ambush their guest with gotcha questions designed to make them look bad." "Gotcha questions?" Alison's voice rose slightly, her own patience finally beginning to fray. "Meghan, I asked you how many people your charity has helped. If that's a gotcha question, then perhaps you should reconsider running a charity." "This is unbelievable," Meghan muttered, shaking her head as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "Harry warned me this would happen. He said the British media establishment would never accept me, would never treat me fairly." "Leave Harry out of this," Alison said sharply. "This isn't about him, and it isn't about the media establishment. This is about you refusing to answer basic questions about your own organization." Meghan's eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't tell me what this is about. You don't get to control the narrative here." "I'm not trying to control anything," Alison replied, her voice rising to match Meghan's energy. "I'm trying to get straight answers from someone who seems incapable of giving them." The confrontation had reached a fever pitch, with both women now openly hostile. What had started as professional disagreement had devolved into something much more personal and destructive. But the worst was yet to come. As Meghan prepared to cross a line that would make her exit from the studio not just dramatic, but inevitable, Meghan's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward in her chair, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "You know what, Alison? I see exactly what this is. This is jealousy, pure and simple. You're sitting there in your little morning show bubble, interviewing soap stars and reality TV contestants, while I'm out there actually changing the world." The insult landed like a sledgehammer. Alison Hammond, who had built her career through genuine warmth and respect for everyone she interviewed, felt something snap inside her chest. The crew held their collective breath as they watched one of British television's most beloved personalities process, being told her life's work was meaningless. Jealousy. Alison's voice was deadly quiet now, each word carefully enunciated. "You think I'm jealous of someone who can't answer a simple question about their own charity without having a public meltdown?" "Don't you dare call this a meltdown," Meghan hissed. "This is me refusing to be bullied by someone who clearly has her own agenda." "My agenda?" Alison's voice rose sharply. "My agenda is doing my job, which apparently is more than we can say for you and your bloody charity." The profanity hung in the air like a bomb exploding. Alison Hammond, the consummate professional who had never lost her temper on air in 2 decades, had just sworn at a member of the royal family on live television. The gallery erupted into chaos as producers scrambled to figure out their next move. Meghan's face contorted with rage. "How dare you speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yeah," Alison shot back, her legendary composure completely shattered now. "You're someone who married into the royal family and then spent the next 5 years complaining about it. You're someone who claims to run a charity but can't tell anyone what it actually does. And right now, you're someone having a tantrum on my show because you don't like being asked basic questions." The studio fell into stunned silence. Alison had just delivered a character assassination so brutal and comprehensive that even hardened television veterans were struggling to process what they'd witnessed. Meghan sat frozen in her chair, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "That's it," Meghan finally managed, her voice shaking with fury. "I'm done with this circus. I'm done with this third-rate show and your pathetic attempts at journalism." She began fumbling with her microphone, her hands trembling with rage as she tried to unhook the battery pack from her waistband. "You people are exactly why Harry and I had to leave this toxic country in the first place. The jealousy, the spite, the desperate attempts to tear down anyone who threatens your little establishment." "Threatens the establishment?" Alison laughed bitterly. "Love, you couldn't threaten a paper bag right now. You can't even answer questions about your own organization without having a complete breakdown. Meghan shot to her feet, the sudden movement nearly toppling her chair backward. Her carefully styled hair had come loose during the confrontation, and her professional makeup couldn't quite hide the mottled red flush of fury covering her face. "This interview is over," she announced, her voice crackling with indignation. "I refuse to sit here and be ambushed by someone who's clearly been briefed to take me down." Ambushed? Alison remained seated, looking up at Meghan with a mixture of disgust and pity. "Meghan, I asked you about scholarship numbers. If basic accountability feels like an ambush to you, then maybe you shouldn't be running a public charity." "Fuck this," Meghan spat, abandoning any pretense of royal dignity. "Fuck this show. Fuck this network. And fuck your jealous, bitter attitude. You're everything that's wrong with British media, and I'm done pretending otherwise." The expletive-laden outburst sent shockwaves through the studio. Camera operators zoomed in instinctively, capturing every moment of the meltdown that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. In the gallery, executives watched their monitors in fascinated horror, knowing they were witnessing television history. Alison remained remarkably calm in the face of the verbal assault, her professionalism reasserting itself even as Meghan spiraled completely out of control. "Well," she said dryly, "I think our viewers have learned everything they need to know about your character." The final insult proved to be the breaking point. Meghan grabbed her handbag and stalked toward the studio exit, her entourage scrambling to follow her. "You haven't heard the last of this," she called over her shoulder. "My lawyers will be in touch about this hit job you just pulled. Looking forward to it," Alison replied calmly, watching as Meghan stormed past the cameras toward the studio doors. "Maybe they can explain what your charity actually does, since you couldn't manage it." As the studio doors slammed shut behind Meghan and her team, an eerie quiet settled over the set. Alison sat alone in her chair, looking directly into the main camera with the slight smile that had endeared her to millions of viewers over the years. "Well," she said, her voice carrying just a hint of satisfaction, "I suppose that's one way to end an interview. When we come back after the break, we'll be talking to a local chef about sustainable cooking. And I promise you, he actually knows what his organization does." The red recording light finally went dark, and the studio erupted in applause from the crew. Alison Hammond had just delivered one of the most spectacular takedowns in British television history, turning what should have been a routine promotional interview into a masterclass in holding public figures accountable. As the morning show cut to commercial, social media was already exploding with clips of Meghan's meltdown and Alison's unflinching refusal to be intimidated by royal connections or victim narratives. The Duchess of Sussex had come to this morning expecting the usual softball treatment, but instead met an interviewer who refused to be charmed, bullied, or manipulated into abandoning her journalistic integrity. In the end, Meghan's dramatic exit said far more about her character than any charity work ever could.